All right, Chiefs Kingdom. So I got a special guest on the channel. He's no stranger to the channel. Michael Darcy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, I love getting you on. I think you are the best guy that has came on this channel. I had Cole on too from HBTC, but you're a good sports talk guy, and I like getting you on.
I appreciate it, my friend. I mean, hey, to even be in the conversation with Cole, that's a huge compliment.
You're definitely up there. You are up there. So the first question, I think a lot of people have been asking this. Do you think Nico Remigio is going to make a spot on the roster?
You know, it's so difficult because they just changed the kickoff rules again. And, the Chiefs also drafted Jalen Royals, who could be, the next punt returner, kick returner. And so does Nico Remigio have a spot on this roster? I think it's really difficult. Now, last year, he was able to, fit the role of, basically wide receiver 7 to a certain extent. And he was, fantastic in kick and punt returns. But I do think that it's not a guarantee that he does make the final 53-man roster because the Chiefs drafted Jalen Royals. And at the same time, I feel like you could probably, kill two birds with one stone and just have Royals be your wide receiver 4 and also, return kicks for you. So I think he's going to be one of those guys we watch in training camp as someone that is going to be fighting for a roster spot. But you also got, Elijah Badger, a UDFA out of Florida. There's a lot of really talented wide receivers are going to be fighting in camp. And that's not forgetting to mention Sky Moore, who's also going to be trying to find a spot on this roster, which talk about a guy that is probably on an uphill battle. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But I think Nico Remigio, at the very least, is going to be on the practice squad.
Yeah, listen, I'm a Nico Remigio fan. I think it really boils down to, are the Chiefs going to go with 6 or 7 wide receivers? If they go with 7, I think Nico Remigio makes this roster. They're most likely going with 6. I think they're going with 6. And if they go with 6, I'm not too sure that Nico Remigio makes this roster. I think if they go with 6 or 7, I don't know if Sky Moore makes either 6 or 7. But with Nico, I think he has a good chance of making the 6. This is going to lead to my next point. Do the Chiefs go with 6 or 7 wide receivers?
It's so difficult because, the Chiefs have 4 running backs right now that are on the roster. You've got Elijah Mitchell, you've got Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and they drafted Brashard Smith.
Yeah.
And are they going to take 4 running backs? Are they going to potentially, cut one of them, take 3, and then 7 wide receivers? Or are they going to take 3 or 4 tight ends? I mean, there's a UDFA at, I believe, Clemson, who's fighting for a spot on this roster. Like, how many tight ends are they going to take? I think we could assume right now probably 3 with Kelsey, Gray, and then Wiley. Mm-hmm. But I think you're going to have to make that sacrifice at running back if you want to take 7 wide receivers. And I'm not sure if they're willing to do that. And so it might be, 6 wide receivers. And do you have like a rough, guesstimate of what your wide receiver room would look like?
Off of memory, let's see. So Sky Moore, I don't think he makes this roster, whether they go with 6 or 7. I just do not think he's gonna do it. Let me pull up because off of my head, I am not really good with this stuff off of my head. So let me pull up the wide receivers. I know Rasheed Rice, he's gonna be one. That's obvious.
I kind of put you on the spot, but to kind of think about it really quickly, just to run off a couple.
Yeah.
Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy.
Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Jalen Royals. I could see Juju making it. And if they wanted to go with 7, it would be between Sky Moore, Justin Ross, Nico Remigio, Jason Brownlee, Elijah Badger, those guys. I honestly think they went with 6, but if they did go with 7, I think that 7th guy would be Nico Remigio.
Well, yeah, I mean, even then, if we just go with our top 5, I'm pretty confident it'll be, your top 3 in Rice.
We know
Brown.
the top 3, right?
Yeah.
We know it's Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy. We know those are the top guys. Hollywood Brown. We know those guys are guaranteed. That's the top 3. We can kind of guarantee the 4 and 5, but 6 and 7, that's where it gets a little challenging. There's a few different guys. Sky Moore, I do not understand how he could make this roster. I just don't see it.
The only way that he would make the roster is if Brett Veach doesn't want to say, I failed on the 2nd round draft pick.
Yeah.
Because if you just look at the roster, I'm not a Justin Ross guy. I don't think that he is going to. I mean, he made the team a couple years ago, and I don't even know how many catches he had. He was not someone that
He
was
didn't do
active.
anything.
No.
Yes.
And he was more valuable to the team than Sky Moore. And I don't think Justin Ross should make the team. So I'm not sure how they can justify putting him on the roster.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I do not see Sky Moore making it. But next question. This is actually a pretty good one. Somebody asked this. Do you think Kingsley Suamataia is the future at left guard for the Kansas City Chiefs? I'm talking, 3, 4, 5+ years.
I'm actually glad that you asked that because this is something that I'm getting ready to talk about on my channel. I think that Kingsley kind of has that job locked up. And I guess I can't definitively say that because it's June and Mike Caliendo is still going to fight for the left guard spot as well. But Kingsley has not only the second round draft pick behind him, but he is someone that athletically has a higher ceiling than Mike Caliendo. And so I do think that Kingsley is at least going to be the starting left guard in 2025. Is he going to be the starting left guard in 2026? I think it kind of depends on, I guess, how the offensive line shakes up, how he performs at left guard. The Chiefs offensive line coach, Andy Heck, compared Kingsley to Laurent Duvernay-Tardif in that development. So I do think that, this could be someone that is the left guard of the future. And I think that's what Andy Reid and this coaching staff hope that he ends up being, because you can't just throw away second round draft picks. And it was pretty evident that last year he's just not a left tackle. He can't do it.
Yeah. Well, they kind of already threw away Sky Moore, and I have a lot of faith in Kingsley Suamataia still as a tackle. We've seen what he does. It's nothing awesome. So I think I actually think he would fit really well at a left guard. I honestly see a future for him at left guard. So Rasheed Rice is back. He's practicing. The Chiefs have been posting pictures and videos of him. I want you to predict his stats for this upcoming season.
Are we assuming that he stays healthy for a full 17 games?
I would assume that he is going to be healthy for a full 17 games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, because you got to think Rasheed Rice is going to be splitting catches with, Hollywood Brown and Xavier. Well, Hollywood Brown's probably going to miss some time, but Xavier Worthy. And you know what? I'll say, I think Rasheed Rice will go for 1,000. I'll give him 1,097. So almost 1,100 yards. And I'll give him 6 or 7 touchdowns.
That sounds about right. That's where I would put him at. I think Rasheed Rice. I mean, if you look at Rasheed Rice's stats last season, he was on his way of getting past 1,000 yards, and he got hurt. I think it was week 4 against the Chargers. It was against the Chargers. I think it was week 4, and that sucked because I always think if Rasheed Rice didn't get hurt, what effect would that have had on the Super Bowl? Could we have won the Super Bowl with Rasheed Rice? And yeah, it's a good question I always think about, but Rasheed Rice is going to break out this season. I honestly do believe that if he can stay healthy, he is going to go crazy.
Well, not only that, but that entire room is just stacked.
I mean,
again, you kind of have to be a little concerned because Rasheed Rice is probably going to serve a suspension. Xavier Worthy had the whole offseason drama. Hollywood Brown hasn't proven that he can stay healthy for a prolonged period of time. Jalen Royals is super exciting as a prospect, but we don't know what he's going to provide in year 1. And so there's going to be a really interesting, study this season that, can this Chiefs wide receiver room elevate the offense? Because over the past couple of years, they just haven't.
Yeah. Well, now I want to talk about Ashton Gillette. We're going to move from offense to defense. I had a chance to talk with him a couple times, not on a video, but on X, and he is excited, very excited. So the question I got for you, if Ashton Gillette works out, could you see George Karlaftis not getting a second contract with the Chiefs?
That's a good question because I was thinking about it. George Karlaftis, since he was drafted in the first round, he's going to have that 5th-year option. And so the Chiefs are already going to get kind of an extra year of George Karlaftis than they normally would get. I think the question is, how does he perform Karlaftis, this year? Because this year is going to be, a huge year for him. If he goes out and has like 14 sacks, he's going to get paid a lot of money. And George Karlaftis is a very solid edge rusher. I'm not sure if you could justify giving him, 60, $70 million. And that could be what he gets on the open market, assuming that, he absolutely balls out. And the Chiefs are in a weird position because they have to pay Trent McDuffie. And they're almost in a weird, do you pay Trent McDuffie? Do you pay George Karlaftis? And so to your point and to your question, yeah, Ashton Gillotte is going to have a really big amount of pressure on him to succeed. I guess not a huge amount, but at the same time, if he goes out there and balls, the Chiefs are going to have some, decisions to make. And I think the Chiefs definitely need a capable edge rusher because Felix, the guy you drafted in the first round, he hasn't been that guy. And so if Gillotte goes out there and has, 6 or 7 sacks in his rookie season, we're going to have a lot of optimism going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question to ask yourself, though. Do you pay George Karlaftis or do you pay Trent McDuffie? And for me, the answer is obvious. I think keeping Trent McDuffie is more important than a pass rusher, especially if Ashton works out. That's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. I like George Karlaftis, but like you said, he's gonna get paid. He is gonna get paid, and the Chiefs need to put that money towards Trent McDuffie. Even though, and it's tough because Brett Veach knows how to draft corners. So then I say that, and then I'm like, well, you could pay Karlaftis and just keep drafting good corners because that's what Brett Veach knows how to do. So it is something to sleep on. It is a good question to ask yourself. But ultimately, I think paying Trent McDuffie would be the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And honestly, this is something that I've thought about a lot. I feel like in order for a team to truly win a Super Bowl, you have to have a dominant defensive player, and specifically on that defensive line. And while George Karlaftis is great and he always shows up in the playoffs, you couldn't win without a Chris Jones. And I don't think that George Karlaftis is at the level of a Max Crosby or another truly elite pass rusher. And I don't think that you can justify paying George Karlaftis elite level money when he's just not, the upper echelon, the top tier, the
Right.
TJ Watts, the Max Crosbys of the NFL. And so Myles Garrett, for example, like I don't think he's definitely not that level, but he's a good second tier.
Yeah. Yeah, he's no disrespect to him. He's not, like you said, the elite, the top of the top, but he is a heck of a player and he's going to get paid, no doubt. It is a good question to think about, though. You pay Trent McDuffie or do you pay George Karlaftis? So let's move on to the next one. Who is one guy for the Chiefs that you see that will break out this year?
Ooh, one guy for the Chiefs is going to break out this year. I feel like the easy answer is, someone in the wide receiver room, just because Rasheed Rice was going to break out last year and he got hurt. Break out. I'm trying to even think like defensively who could be, a breakout player because like Leo Chenal took a huge step in 2024. Yeah. You know what? I'll go ahead and I will say, ooh, who's gonna break out? You know what? I'll say Jalen Royals. I think Jalen Royals have a
That's
really good
exactly
season.
mine too. That is exactly mine. Yep, Jalen Royals, and I think it makes sense. I think they're really going to target him this season. I think they're really going to target him, and I have a lot of faith in Jalen Royals. I love Jalen Royals. He has a great college tape, and another guy to watch if he makes it could be Rasheed Smith. He's another guy to watch.
I wonder how they're going to use him because he's almost Jerick McKinnon-esque. But I do wonder, how is he going to fit in a running back room that has Pacheco, who's in the final year of a contract, Kareem Hunt, who's hungry, Elijah Mitchell, who, I mean, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be great, but you can't bank on that. So there's a lot of questions in that running back room. And if Rasheed Smith gets the opportunity, he could be someone that's very special, but you never know until he gets the opportunity.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Omar Norman-Lott. I'm very high on him, but what do you think about him?
I'm excited. I was really happy when the Chiefs drafted him. Like, this is a guy coming out of college that had the highest pressure rating among defensive tackles in college last year. and the Chiefs have lacked a well, I guess I, the guy that the why can't I think of his name? Went to Carolina in the offseason, got paid a lot of money. Turk Wharton.
Yeah.
Turk Wharton got paid a bag by the Carolina Panthers, and he was a formidable, pass rusher to have alongside Chris Jones. But it kind of just popped up in 2024, and so I feel like if the Chiefs could get, another guy that could get to the quarterback, interiorly alongside Chris Jones, that's just going to help this, pass rush be a lot more successful because, if you can't triple team Chris Jones if there's also somebody in the middle that can force pressure. And I love Derek Nottie and I love Mike Pennell, but they were not, guys that normally get to the quarterback.
Yeah. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I did talk about this in my video. I think it was my last video. And I was talking about how the Chiefs need to start looking for the Chris Jones replacement. And by replacement, I'm not saying an actual replacement where they need to replace him now and go, but they need to look for his future replacement. Chris Jones is not going to be here forever. And we're lucky that he's still doing good with his age. We are very lucky about how good he's performing. And the Chiefs need to utilize that. And I think they went out and addressed the defensive tackle spot. I think Omar Norman Lott is possibly the future guy. Hopefully, I hope he is because we need to find a guy that can come and play and learn under Chris Jones now, so that when the time comes, hopefully we got a whole nother Chris Jones.
Yeah, and that's the hope that he can learn under Chris Jones and not have the pressure to play right away. Like he doesn't have to start day one. I think he probably will, but you have Mike Pennell. You have Jerry Tillery, who you signed in the offseason, and he's kind of an edge defensive tackle hybrid. But I do think that there's not in a huge amount of pressure for, Omar Norman Lott to start right away. I do think he ends up winning that job out of camp, though. I think he will be the second starting defensive tackle.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what they did with Kingsley Suamataia last year. They threw him in too fast. I think they threw him in way too fast. I think if they were to let him sit, maybe he could have learned. You throw him in a little bit here and there, games where you're up ahead. You throw him in just here and there and acclimate him. I think maybe that guy could have worked out at left tackle, but they threw him in. So now we got to hope that he works out at left guard. Now with Josh Simmons, you can either go with Jalen Moore. You paid him the money, and you could let Josh Simmons sit back. I think they're most likely going to start Josh Simmons, which I hope isn't a mistake. I actually want to ask you, do you think they're going to start Jalen Moore or Josh Simmons at left tackle?
I personally want them to start Jalen Moore at left tackle just
Yeah.
because right now, you paid him all that money all that money. You gave him $15 million, this season, then technically next year you can get out of the deal, but you paid him to be the starting left tackle. And then you drafted Josh Simmons, but he's going through that torn patellar tendon and he's coming back. And yeah, he's practicing in OTAs, like practicing in air quotes. He's participating in the drills, but again, there's no live contact. And so what is he going to be like when, he's got to block George Karlaftis, a, 250-pound edge rusher after not really having anybody hit that knee, in the last, year. And you also have kind of the benefit of hindsight right now with a different guy the Chiefs brought in last year. When I went down to New Orleans, I got to talk to DJ Humphries, and he kind of told me that the Chiefs kind of threw him in a little too quickly and that he wasn't ready for that contact, and he tore his ACL. This is a torn patellar tendon, and I don't think that this is something that the Chiefs should just, ruin again and put Josh Simmons in at left tackle and don't give him the proper amount of time to heal.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They paid Jalen Moore decent money to play left tackle, so I expect him to play left tackle. Josh Simmons, I think, could be the future left tackle for this Chiefs team, and if he is, great. That's what Patrick Mahomes needs, but you probably want to take the safe route and let him sit for the year. Now, if you start Jalen Moore and he doesn't work out how you thought, then okay, you can put Josh Simmons in, see how he goes. But yeah, I would have Jalen Moore start this year and then throw him in here and there to test, see how he does. And then next year come around, then let him play fully at left tackle. That's what the heck I would do.
I just don't get the thought process of going out and paying Jalen Moore when you're not going to play him, because we talked about Kingsley being the left guard. If you're giving Jalen Moore this money, he should be the left guard. Kingsley can ride the bench, and he can just sit behind Jalen Moore if, Josh Simmons does end up being the starter, because I don't know what the Chiefs are doing, like giving Jalen Moore that money if Josh Simmons ends up panning out.
What I think possibly happened is I think they always had their eye on Josh Simmons, but although when draft time got closer, a few people were mocking him to the Chiefs, not everybody really thought he would really drop all the way to the Chiefs. I was hoping, we were all optimistic, but we all knew that was a long shot. So I think what Brett Veach did is he went out and paid Jalen Moore, and I think Josh Simmons fell down the board and he said, heck with it. Might as well take him. He fell. And you paid Jalen Moore, so you might as well just start him.
Yeah. And listen, if Josh Simmons is so good in training camp that you have to start him, then Jalen Moore should be the left guard. And Kingsley should be, backing up either Trey Smith at right guard or backing up Jalen Moore at left guard. But, Kingsley's kind of the odd man out in this situation if they do end up having Josh Simmons start.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining the show. We had a pretty good show. Now, before we do go, you want to go ahead and link your YouTube channel and your X and all that good stuff?
Of course, yeah. You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report. That is kind of the one-stop shop for everything that I do. I try to post daily Chiefs coverage, but, it's a little slow in the offseason. But once the season starts, I know that we will both be just grinding and getting as much content out as possible. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at @TheMichaelDarcy.
Listen, this guy, when the season starts, this guy is putting 2 videos out a day. How, I don't know. But this guy is putting 2 videos out a day when the season starts. And you do a good job over at your channel. Your growth and views and subscribers back that up. So thank you, my friend, for making the time to come on today.
Thank you for having me.